Welcome everyone tonight. This is our Planning Successful Green Team Actions. And this is a part of a series of webinars we call Learning Labs, which we'll be holding every month and will be recorded for people to listen to later on. I want to give a little bit of an opening orientation to this webinar, in that each of you have a control panel and you will be muted until we have what we call solution circle at the very end. And that will be a time in which you'll have control of your own sound, and we will unmute you so that you can then speak and share ideas. We'll have a talk back around stories or perhaps questions, things that you're wondering, how can I get this done? So it's an opportunity for us to have a conversation about what you are working on, what you're interested in, and to get some support for that. So, and be sure that you do, if you have a question before that though, we will be monitoring the question box. Please enter your question with your name and your congregation. And when we get to that portion of the webinar, it will be after the first three panelists speak, and we will field the questions to the panelists from the questions that you enter there. So now we're going to move on to our first speaker.
Hello, Colia? Colia?
Yes, Chris?
Oh, you were going to open with a prayer?
Yes, thank you. I will start with the prayer, and I ask everyone to join me in this prayer as we embark on this webinar and we go forth from here. Oh God, Holy Spirit, creator of the universe, guide our words and thoughts that we may be instruments of your inspiration. May we all learn the actions we can take that will contribute to the health, healing, and restoration of earth, water, air, and the whole web of life. Amen. Thanks, Chris.
Amen.
Our first presenter tonight is Gary Gillespie, and he is the Green Team leader at Homewood Friends Quaker Meeting, and he's going to share with us the ways that his congregation, in particular his team, has planned and executed actions to care for creation at Homewood Friends Quaker Meeting. Take it away, Gary.
Yes, hi. I'm actually one of the team leaders. You know, we have a fairly good working group. We basically got started as an ad hoc committee and started looking at Ottawa Friends Meeting had a checklist of greening your congregation. And we started using their checklist, which included transportation, energy, food, etc. And we, through time, evolved into a working group, and last year it became a standing committee of the meeting, which means we have a budget. The four areas of focus, which I'll talk about, are greening our congregation, education of the wider community, and legislative action, joining actions of the wider community. Next slide. It's part of greening our community in partnership, One Water Partnership. Over a year ago, we applied for a grant with the Chesapeake Bay Trust to basically remove our grass. The meeting house is located across from Johns Hopkins University. It's a very urban area. We have a lawn, and as part of our grant, we got rid of the lawn in order to create a native garden, and also to have two large cisterns placed beside the meeting house. And there's a photo of the cistern being built in Blue Water, Baltimore, at their offices And next slide. And the cistern, one of the cisterns in place right before we started to develop the garden.
Mhm.
Next
Yeah,
slide.
Gary,
Yes.
could you just say a word or two about what a cistern does and why it's important? Some
Oh,
folks
okay.
might not know what a
Sure.
cistern is.
Well, we have a fairly large meeting house and meeting room that has a copper roof, gallons and gallons, hundreds and hundreds of gallons leave the roof and end up in the street, going through different pipes and then the storm drains. And so there's a really large amount of water during a storm that flows into the Jones Falls. And what the cistern does is a couple things. It slows that process. It also holds probably about 360 gallons, the two cisterns, and we use those to water the native garden.
Great, thank you.
That's it? Okay. And next slide. Well, anyway, this is a group of volunteers, including members of Homewood Friends Meeting, some of the staff of Blue Water Baltimore, and folks that came out from One Water Partnership to help us plant the garden. We planted, I think it was 186 plants that day. And we actually, it was, yeah, here's the process of stripping the grass. Next slide. And that's Jesse from One Water Baltimore giving us direction on where the plants will be planted. Blue Water Baltimore did a design of our space and created locations for all the plants. The garden actually was spectacular last year, and we're getting ready again for the spring. Next slide. One of the other pieces in terms of sustainability of our meeting house started a number of years ago when the meeting decided to purchase and install solar panels on the meeting house. And we have about 60% of our electricity comes from the panels. This past Sunday at our business meeting, we decided that we would invest $30,000 to go 120% in terms of our capacity, which is creating a future capacity for the panels for electricity in our building, because we have a large group that we have a synagogue, a Baptist church, two Buddhist groups, belly dancing, tango. All these folks rent from our building, and so the meeting house is actually used for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Next slide. One of the areas which I mentioned was the education of the wider community. And the way we have done that is we hosted One Water Partnership Stream Walk. We were the site of One Water Partnership bus tour to sort of talk about our solar panels. And we also have a series of workshops we've been doing. Back in September, home energy workshop. About 2 weeks ago, rain barrel workshop with Blue Water Baltimore. The energy workshop was with Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake. And next week, next Tuesday, 6:30 at the meeting house, Audubon is giving a workshop on wildlife gardening, a wildlife gardening workshop. So we continue in terms of the wider community to invite them to the workshop. It's also self-education for our community. The other thing that our meeting has done, our green team has done, is a series of films for the wider community, including Rising Tide in Dorchester. And we had the producer, Tom Horton, who's an environmental writer, introduce the film and answer questions about it. We showed also Naomi Klein's This Changes Everything, the film, and Chasing Carl.
Great. I think we have a slide about your movie showing and as well.
Oh, okay. I didn't know when we would get there, but
Yeah.
this photograph is a group from Homewood heading off. We're in DC at the Union Station for the People's Climate Movement demonstration. This is part of our actions in order to make change. Next slide. This is a group after meeting for worship at Homewood. We have a banner supporting the Maryland Clean Energy Jobs Act. We participated in Lobby Day. We went to Annapolis as a group, and all through the process supported that bill. Next slide. And this is about our film series, High Tide in Dorchester. Next slide. And the garden was planted, and we had a celebration, which a large number of people from the meeting joined the celebration. Bonnie Sorak is talking from in this photograph from Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake. And next slide. And that is Susie Creamer from Patterson Park Audubon awarding us with a sign. We were certified as a bird-friendly native garden.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we're putting up the sign this weekend. Next slide.
Yep.
Oh, we were missing one, and the one slide was really about participation, not only legislatively, but we participated in the climate strike and also the People's Climate Movement in Baltimore as a congregation. I'm done.
Great, Gary. You've really laid out quite an array of actions that Homewood Friends has taken, and it's still going on. It's exciting to hear that you just had this event recently, and I think these are lots of ideas for other folks to be inspired to go forth and do likewise. So stay online, and we'll be fielding questions in a few moments.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now our next presenter is Chris Gordon. And Chris Gordon is a Green Team leader at Holy Family Catholic Church in Davidsonville. He's also a Master Watershed Steward in Anne Arundel County. And so I want to invite Chris to share with us some of the actions that his congregation has taken to care for and restore God's creation. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so hello everyone. Oh yeah, there's a good one. So glad that you're all here with us today. This is the front of our church, and you're looking at a rain garden that about 4 years ago was all lawn. So we've since pulled all that lawn out and converted that to a rain garden. This was dug down about 10 feet, filled in with engineered soil with a sub-piping system. And there's actually two of them. One of them right behind us as we stand in front of this one, because there's a two-piece of an island. And the water from there, all the water from the front of the church and the chapel, which would be to the left that you don't see, it's off camera. All that water is captured in these two rain gardens, and any excess goes to a dry pond at the rear of the property. So every drop of water that falls on our church property is treated either through a rain barrel or rain garden or a dry pond, where it's released slowly into the ecosystem, so that to prevent the carving out of the creek beds. And So that's kind of a really nice thing to be able to say. 100% of our rainwater is captured and treated from 1 degree to another. So let's go to the next slide. So this is actually one of the first events that I did, which was a tree planting program, which we did with IPC, and we planted about 70 trees that in one day. We got a lot of turnout with kids and adults and everything. And then, well, our priest, Father Andy, standing there. This isn't the day that we planted them. He wasn't there for that. This is the day of the blessing of the trees. So, but we did have quite a turnout and with lots of kids, and we even planted some trees on our neighbors' property that joined us, where we were doing some tree planting with them. It was really nice that they said that they wanted some trees. We said wasn't even in our plan, but we were in a position that we could just adjust the spacing on the tree and make sure that everybody got some trees. So 2 other additional neighbors got some of those trees that we planted. Let's go for the next slide. So we'll go by this quickly, but this is an area where a lot of invasive vines were pulled out. And so things like English ivy, you have to walk back in any place that you've ever done any English ivy removal. You have to come back for years pulling up every spring all the little sprouts that come up from the birds eating the English ivy seeds that grow, and you'll only see those when you allow English ivy to grow up on trees. So, okay, let's go to the next one. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we accomplished at Holy Family. And one thing to understand is Holy Family is a medium. It's on the larger size of the churches, but there's a lot of really big ones, and we're not it. But there's about 2,000 families, and we see about 1,000 people every Sunday, Saturday and Sunday. So it is a nice size, it's a real nice group of people. So one of the Green Team's main goal is to engage the youth groups at church. We'll do that for like an hour on a Sunday evening before they go have their youth meeting. I found that you really want to get something done, figure out how to get it done in an hour, and you'll probably get it done. The longer you wait, the longer you try to stretch out the project, the more time you're like a little frustrated when more play comes in rather than work. But that's just my experience. So we have scout groups, and they're good for about 2 hours. And then we also always get in the spring the one-off of kids that need service hours, and so I always have projects to have them power wash, clean gravel in a rain garden. There's always things. There's all that English ivy is always coming back. So anyway, so those are some of the people that we engage. We engage in watering plants, particularly in the summer, garden maintenance, mulching, as we identify new trees that need some particular attention. Let's see. So one of the things you had asked me to call you to talk about for a sentence or two was, how do you get it done? How do we get things done? It's relationships with Scout and youth ministries, the church staff is always very important, because they are they've got their ear to the rail, as it were, and they hear about opportunities where kids call in and say, "Hey, I can't graduate. I need 6 hours of service hours in the next week. What can you do?" And we find them something for them to be able to do. So one of the things we'll talk about a couple more slides real quick, but
Yeah.
how do we engage these guys in the action? One of the big things that I do is write a column in our weekly bulletin, and so I've written 250 or so of them, something unique each and every week, and that creates dialogue with groups of people so that they know what's going on around here. And it's kind of fun to pull into church and you see people wandering around reading signs next to a rain barrel, trying to figure out, what does this thing do here? And you can't stand there all day long waiting for somebody to show up. So signage is so very important. So very important when you do these kinds of projects. So we looked at a couple of slides of these praying mantises, and you don't get these kind of things if you're using pesticides. So we try to really, really, really be mindful about what kind of pesticides you use. And certainly sometimes when you have a big enough landscape, certain plants get attacked, and we might have to do something to keep the survival of that plant in play. But overall, I mean, in times past where those guys would spray and they put little green flags all over the property and stuff, those days are over. Let's go to the next slide. So here's another monarch butterfly caterpillar. Once again, that's growing on milkweed, and that's growing in our rain gardens. And so that butterfly will fly all the way to Mexico in the fall. It's amazing how it does it. It takes 3 butterfly cycles to get here, but only 1 to get back down. That's just the life cycle of a monarch butterfly is important, and they can't do it unless you got milkweed in your rain gardens. Let's go to the next one. Oh, there's just a bluebird. I just love my bluebirds. But you got to have native plants, and you got to have habitat, which in most cases habitat, they got to have fresh water. When I heard earlier we're talking about being an urban setting, you just wonder how much water is available for these animals. So that's an important thing to do, to have keep a bird bath going in your habitat. Let's go. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of some of my columns, and it's that big column at the top on both of these pages. So you can see it's not too long. It's not too long, but it could take me a half hour or so to write one to try to be succinct. And it usually starts out with "Did you know?" and then we go down the trail of whatever subject that we want. It's interesting, this time of year we are there's not much planting going on. You can do some weeding now, but it's kind of cold and people aren't really excited. There will be soon enough. So I've been talking a lot about energy conservation, LED light bulbs, recycling. So there's still lots of things that are going on that really make that really tie in the whole taking care of caring for creation, God's creation. And so it's a real nice communications. And people look for, they'll walk up to me, somebody I don't really know, because the congregation is so big, or if I go to a mass I don't usually go to a different time, they'll walk up and say, "Aren't you Chris Gordon? Oh, I just love your column," which makes you feel good, but it makes you feel good because it's making a difference in people's lives when they, if they say they read it every month or every week rather, they're trying to learn something. So let's go to our next slide.
Yeah, I think we're just going to wrap it up in the next minute here.
Okay, that's fine. So anyway, here's a work crew visiting the one of our rain gardens, and I guess it's one of the most important things is when you're engaging youth on these projects is I want to spend 15-20 minutes telling them what we're going to do and why we're going to do it, rather than just saying, here, you go and you pick up rocks. If that's what you want to do. No, we're here because we want clean water. And these plants that are right here give us clean water because it filters out the water and captures the nitrogen, and they use nitrogen to create carbon. Mm-hmm. And next slide. I think there's only a couple left.
Yeah.
And again, there's a rain barrel, which we heard about earlier, which is a small rain garden. Okay. And my rain barrels are connected to a soaker hose, so that it's laid out into the native garden beds, so it doesn't require having to come and actually water the plants. It does it by itself. So I guess that's it.
Well,
Bonnie, you're up.
Thank you, Chris. That was great. And we're hearing some common threads throughout, and you've given some wonderful ideas and examples for folks listening in. Thanks again. Stay on, and we'll have a question and answer period in just a minute or two. So our next presenter is Bonnie Thompson, and she is a Green Team leader at Govans Presbyterian Church. And so we're going to hear from Bonnie about some of the actions that they've taken there, and especially about maintaining a project that they had installed.
Hi, everybody. Next slide. As Koila said, I'm from Govans Presbyterian Church. We're an old congregation dating back to 1844. We are about a block and a half south. We're in Northeast Baltimore City, about a block and a half south of York Road and Northern Parkway, and 1/2 block below the historic Senator Theater. This is just a picture of the front of our church. We have an education building off to the left, which you'll see in a little part of in a later slide. Next. So before, I was asked to talk about maintenance of projects that we've accomplished. And before I speak to the specifics of the maintenance, I wanted to show a few pictures about 2 of the projects that we have accomplished. The first slide here is the construction of a bioretention pond in November 2017. And we hired contractors in, an engineer designed it. We hired contractors in to excavate and to build it. So this is the work underway. Next slide. This is it completed about a month later. It was done approaching winter. So due to the timing of the season and when this was finished, it was not appropriate for us to plant the rain garden portion of this project. So it was big, heavy black cloth was put down to sort of keep it in place through the winter. As you will see, sort of approximately midway, there's a drain, teal-colored, aqua-colored drain sticking up there. And then off to the right, there are 2 smaller little pipes that are hooked into the underground system right there. There are 2 little pipes. There's a forebay, and then this, we built it with keeping in mind trying to attract young people and children. So we have this little pathway built that separates the front part of where the water initially comes in, and then when it gets really full, it spills over into the back portion. Next slide. This is a picture. So it was finished in December. We really couldn't do anything about it. We worked and did publicity about getting some volunteers to come in the spring, and we had a fabulous turnout. Our church really supported all the efforts that went into getting the grants. We got 2 different grants to accomplish this. And so on April 14th, it was a Saturday morning. We had upwards of 25 folks coming. In fact, there were so many people that came, we had to take turns and shifts to put all the little seedlings in. But these are 2 pictures of the work in progress. Next. This is a pic. We were all finished at the end of the day. We had a picture. This is those who did the late shift. This is a photo of our green team. Next. This is a picture. The grant also helped us pay for this sign. You can see Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake down there in the corner. But these were all the partners that worked with us to get it installed. It talks about what a bioretention pond is, and we are on a footpath, so to speak, for folks going to the Senator Theater, and our church lets attendees to the theater park in our parking lot. So we felt it was very important sort of advertise and show off and explain this project that we put in. Next. So I don't know if you'll remember, but back in 2018, spring of 2018, began the monsoon season in Baltimore. And literally by Monday, we planted on a Saturday the 14th. By Monday, we were flooded and overflowing. This is a picture after all the water drained, but you can sort of see how high up the water reached. If you look, it's a little hard to see, but that big drain pipe, if you were to zoom in on this, you can see a ring of mulch around the top of the drain. So we exceeded the capacity of this pond, and we could always tell when we had, because there was always a ring of mulch. Next slide. So this is a little hard to see, but this is literally the inlet. And one of the consequences of this huge downpour was that, and in this newly planted rain garden and a pond to hold all the water, was we had massive floating mulch that was originally intended to help protect the plants, help keep the water in, and it became a floating pond of mulch. It's pretty hard to distinguish, but on the very bottom left corner, the water was so high, all those stones you saw running through the middle, and there's a ledge on the west side of the pond. You can see the mulch was lifted and deposited on top of these huge boulders. This is also a picture showing the inlet completely covered. The inlet it was some cement, a little bit of cement with a bunch of uneven stones. And again, it's connected to a drain pipe where all the water flows in, and it was totally buried in mulch. Next slide. So as a result of that very rainy season, we lost about 90% of our plants in the rain garden. It did not stop raining all season. Blue Water Baltimore is very, very helpful to us in terms of figuring out how to manage it. We had to add actually an extra drain pipe into the pond to help mitigate some of the overflowing. And a lot of the plants we lost to flood. Blue Water Baltimore helped us replant in the fall of 2018. Again, we needed to wait some time and hopefully have some of the mulch settle down, but we replanted that fall, and this is a picture of what it looked like. There used to be a bush where that tree is now. A lot of the things on the sides survived. The low phlox, that all survived, but the things down in the bottom did not. Next. This is just another view. You can see dead center in this picture, there's kind of a light spot right there. That is sand. One of the other complicating things we had happen is we had a lot of sand wash in from our parking lot. I believe we had something before we started this and the project you'll see next. I think it's 85,000 square feet of impervious surface on our campus. We have a pretty big campus for a city church. And the pond is absolutely doing what it was designed to do, capturing lots and lots of water. But one of the other problems we had was a lot of sand washing in. We have a preschool on our campus, and their playground in that rainy season was washing lots of sand. This is a picture of how far in the sand washed. It washed into the second part of the pond. In terms of maintenance, when we first installed, we were told by Blue Water Baltimore probably once or twice a year we ought to do a good clean out of the pond. And what we have found, especially after that rainy season, is I think we cleaned it 4 times in the first year. We had to go in and vacuum out sand, sweep up sand to remove it from the inlet. Because it's lower than all the other surfaces on the campus, it tends to collect a lot of trash. So we routinely go in and you can walk down in it when it's not full of water, and we can pick out the trash. We clean off the grate on top of that drain. We get the mulch down off of that. We're hoping this season everything is sort of calmed down and we'll have a good growing season to sort of bring it along a little bit. Next slide. The other project we installed on our campus, we call our Peace Terrace. This connects the terrace that connects the sanctuary on your left, the education building on the right. And the terrace that preceded this one was in pretty rough shape, and we were contemplating what we needed to do about fixing it. And Blue Water Baltimore again was extremely instrumental in helping us fund this project. This is a pervious surface terrace. The very, very outside edges are not pervious, but and so the church ended up having to match the money. We paid about half the cost of the total cost of the installation of this project. So far, there has not been a lot of maintenance to this. A few, scraping of gum off of it, that sort of thing. But the main concern we were warned about was during snowstorms or anytime we needed to clear it for snow and ice, we needed to be really careful about what we use to treat it. And essentially calcium chloride is the choice of to use to treat it. Sodium chloride is okay. Magnesium chloride is a big no-no on cement and on this. This was done April, so we are coming up on 2 years. It's still in really great shape, and it's been pretty low maintenance so far.
Great.
I think that's the end of my slides.
Yep. Thank you very much, Bonnie and Chris and Gary. So at this point, we're going to take some questions of you from our listening and watching audience. And I'm looking at the chat box and I don't see any questions there. And I don't see a question box, however. And so I'm actually going to have to ask my colleague Anna to see if she is seeing any questions at this time.
Yeah, so we don't have any questions yet. So feel free to use your chat box if you have any questions and just type them in there, and we'll answer them.
Yeah. Any questions of Gary or Chris or Bonnie about how they got these things done, or some of the resources that they were able to secure from both Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake or other organizations. While people are typing their chats, I wanted to pose that question, especially to the 3 presenters. If you could each say, specifically how IPC had helped you in one or two ways to help get your actions off the ground or supported.
I'll go. This is Bonnie. Interfaith Partners was our hand holder from the beginning. We started with a water audit back in 2014 with Blue Water Baltimore, and I think not too long after that, Interfaith Partners sort of entered our life. Bonnie Sorak and staff were so helpful in terms of sort of pointing us in the right direction, sponsoring grant writing workshops that taught me how to write a grant. They answered questions. They came out to our site and sort of talked us through options and that sort of thing. So you all
Great.
have
That's a great example of how IPC works to connect congregations of faith with the kinds of resources, be they technical resources or financial resources that congregations might not otherwise be aware of. Chris or Gary, would you like to add anything about that?
Oh, sure. You know, it was very helpful in the early creation of our team to connect with IPC around grant writing, really envisioning transformation of our lawn into a garden. I think it was Bonnie that found the particular cisterns we've used, even though there's some real flaws with that in Blue Water. Installed the cisterns and have done several repairs. But, you know, it's a whole process, and we've also been engaged in, like I said, different activities like native walks and some of the legislative recommendations IPC we were involved with. I mean, in One Water Partnership, we have developed a relationship with other congregations. So it's been a really important partnership for us. Still is.
Great. Chris, did you want to chime in about an answer to that question about how IPC has supported your actions?
Well, you know, you're digging for a compliment and you deserve every bit of it. You know, they were, once again, for me, just right out of graduation from the Watershed Stewards Academy, I didn't know my life was going to change so much, but IPC was there with our first tree planting, and so one of the things that's happened is, you know, whenever we have events, you guys stop by. You know, whenever you've like done tours to show off some of the things that we're doing here in Anne Arundel County. So that's always real nice. I love giving tours and leading people off into how to do it. Now, we've hosted you guys. Hosted little conferences, mini conferences at our church, and that, you know, that's sort of, you know, paying forward for, you know, what's been done before. And I just love getting the opportunity to work with, well, not only really nice people, but really nice people from all different congregations and faiths. So, I mean, it's all these people from every faith, but we all sort of have the same vision of what we should be doing with the environment, and I just love it.
That's great, Chris. Thank you very much.
This is Bonnie. I was going to say, I have one more thing to add, that if you're doing it again and any folks that are listening have not participated, one thing I would say that Govans really benefited from your leadership, IPC's leadership, was the visioning process. Community visioning that really helped us hone in on and sort of channel the directions as to what we wanted to accomplish. There was a lot of interest and enthusiasm, but in terms of that visioning process, that was extremely helpful to our congregation to sort of to get things in motion.
Great. Well, those are all really great pointers for other folks who may not have benefited as you have yet, but are looking forward to accessing these resources. One of the resources that we promote, and each of you actually gave examples of, is action. We call the menu for action, and it's a menu that has forming actions, which are awareness building, education. It's really about building up awareness about the issues of environmental stewardship and connecting it with our faith. And then the second phase is caring actions, which are those projects on our grounds that are happening, or it might be off our campus with working with the community to do a stream cleanup. And then going forth is the third level, if you will, of moving out into the community and connecting with other congregations for a joint project. Like in Baltimore, there was a film showing with featuring Doug Ptolemy's work, and 3 congregations joined together to sponsor a film showing. So you can find our menu for action for several regions that we're engaged in on our website. And all of this is in response to the requests that we've heard and the evidence that we've seen that building green teams actually helps spearhead and move forward effective actions. So that's actually my segue that I'm going to.
Well, we have a couple of questions. One is for Gary Gillespie, and somebody was asking. They heard that 60% of your electricity needs are met by the rooftop solar. Is that true?
Yes, it is. And what we hope to probably, we just allocated money to reach 120%, so we can look into the future. So right now, 60%.
Great.
So what's the cost payback on those solar panels? You have to buy the panels, but then you save the money, right?
Yeah, the latest proposal on this was, I probably can't answer this, but the latest proposal was over a period of, I think it's 25 years at $60,000, and the panels probably will cost us close to $30,000.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks.
That's the additional.
Yeah. The next question.
One other question.
Yeah, one other question goes to everybody. How do you get your church involved in the youth service hours requirement for graduation? Is that statewide?
Is that a bit? What was the last part of that? Is that a big what?
Is it statewide? So the youth service hours, do you, like, how do you engage the youth and satisfy their hours?
So, well, we have lots of opportunities for youth. We really want to try to, if they, the high schoolers, if they're coming in and they need some hours, we will find them things to do. Doing invasives, cleaning the buildings, or power washing, and cleaning out the forebays of the rain gardens.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's endless things to do.
Do they come to you with a form to fill out, or you have to go through any any kind of hoops?
Yeah, they come. So we have some of the local Catholic schools that are tied with us. So those are kind of easy transition ones. But then we have parents who send their kids to the public schools, but they got hours there as well. And so they'll call the office saying, hey, I need, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours. What can you do? And we have to always be ready to find something for them to do. Yeah. And I don't think we've ever sent them away.
Great.
Sometimes they don't come back on the next day because they're too tired.
Oh, that's great. You put them to work and they're doing good work.
Right.
All right. Well, any other questions, Anna, that you're aware of? I don't see
No,
any.
that's it for now.
But I have a question. This is Bonnie. I have a question for Gary in terms of your native garden. What can you, in terms of planning it, what are the top 3 things that need to be taken into consideration?
Oh, and part of it is Homewood, the meeting house, has a stream underneath. So that's why we didn't move towards the idea of a rain garden. And the cisterns were very, very important. So we had to be aware of any sort of flooding in terms of underneath our meeting house or the basement. We have a garden club for the maintenance. So every couple weeks, a group of us get together and we do maintenance, weeding, that sort of thing. And that's a really important piece in terms of maintenance of gardens.
Okay.
And I'm trying to, the other thing, someone had written about the lawn stripping tool. And the reason we use that particular tool was we have 3 or 4 steps up to the garden. So the tool had to be carried up to the garden. So we had a lot of it was sort of hand stripping of the lawn. And then the next step is get enough volunteers to plant 186 plants. And like I said, Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake helped out with their volunteers.
Great. Well, thank you for answering those questions. I think we're going to move on now to the portion of the last 10 minutes we have here for our solution circle. And so what is a solution circle? Well, it's an opportunity that we want to have for each of these webinars, folks on the line who would like to share a story about what you're doing. You might have a question of each other, like who's doing zero waste, or who's doing an energy audit and how to get that done. Or somebody out on the line might have that experience, and any other ideas you might want to offer for resources and networking. So that's what a solution circle is and how to participate. Again, your control panel, Anna, who's behind the curtain, so to speak, with the technology, is going to make it possible for each of you to actually manually turn off or on your mic. So if you'd like to speak, you click on the little green microphone. Otherwise, you can stay muted, and then mute yourself when you're done speaking. So if there's anyone out there in the airwaves of cyberspace, feel free to chime in now.
Yes. I sent him 3 questions and they don't appear to have gone in.
Oh dear. And say who you are and what congregation you're from, please.
Cynthia Taylor, Mount Olive, United Methodist in Randallstown. And I typed the questions in, but they don't seem to have gone through.
I'm sorry. Well, can you say them now?
Well, one question, it was just a curiosity question. Do rain gardens contain any edible plants like herbs or anything like that?
Anybody want to ask that? They do have to be plants that absorb the water. Yeah, I know our watershed steward, Chris, could probably answer that best.
Well, one of the challenges with using herbs or plants in a rain garden is you got to think about where's that water's coming from. And in most cases, it's coming off of pervious surfaces. It's coming off of parking lots.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that, with oil and gas and all kinds of things dripping on it. So usually a rain garden isn't the best place for those kind of plants.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
rain barrel, some hay bale garden somewhere would be a much better place to grow those.
Thank you, Chris.
We do have a fig tree, fig tree and 2 apple trees from the orchard project that are, yes.
And that's your native plant garden.
Yes.
That's not a rain garden.
No, it's actually just sort of trained against the meeting house wall.
Yeah. Did you have two other questions?
Yes. I wasn't understanding how you engage blue water. It's after you, I mean, I went to the green leader training, but how does do they come in? Is it possible to get them to come in and kind of look at what you have and give you some suggestions?
Bonnie,
Absolutely.
I know they say that they do a water audit, so Bonnie could probably say it about something.
Right. That's how we became engaged with them. We invited them to come and walk our property and give us some advice about projects or things we could do to contribute to the healing, and management of water. So absolutely, they have staff that can come and do that with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we would engage them through IPC or directly?
Probably either, but I think we reached out directly. We started with them, and then Interfaith had already been working with them, and I'm not sure that Blue Water Congregations exists anymore, but when we were involved, there was a sort of a subset of Blue Water Baltimore that was called Blue Water Congregations.
Yeah.
And that's where I believe IPC connected also with Blue Water Baltimore.
Right, and we're still partnering with them, and now that program has evolved really into what we now call the One Water Partnership.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
Very, very highly trained, knowledgeable folks that are doing a myriad of things, but they can absolutely help you sort of assess
Right.
a way forward.
Right, and the assessment doesn't cost the congregation. It's that they'll provide like a site map of various locations of where projects could go and such. So.
And just a little anecdote, when we had them do two, because the first one they did, in fact, I just looked at it last night. The first one we had done back in 2014, they came with things like, put rain barrels up and plant trees. And we kind of had sort of done that. And we were involved with the Baltimore Orchard Project. So when IPC came on the scene, we sort of said, we want something a little more meaty to take on. And so we went back again with IPC to Blue Water Baltimore and said, can you come do this again? And lo and behold, we had actually 3 projects that were proposed. We only opted to do 2 of them.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Is there anyone else want to chime in a question? Yes.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Mine, I posted mine as well, and for whatever reason, they were also not seen. So I don't know what's going on. But
and your name and congregation, please.
My name is Wendy Hall. I'm with Columbia Jewish Congregation. And my first question is for Bonnie. And I'm wondering if she has any idea why the rain garden plants didn't tolerate the flooding. I would think that's what rain garden plants are supposed to do.
Correct. I don't know if I totally know, but our bioretention pond was underwater consistently. To the point where I don't think there was enough sun and dry weather to, that allowed them to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
It was just, again, I don't know if you remember that season, but it was, I forget how many inches of rain, 22 inches of rain. And again, our pond has been very effective in the sense of gathering the rain off of we have a fairly large parking lot. Mm-hmm. So almost anytime there's even a medium-sized rain, the pond tends to get filled. Actually, the other thing I will note, another issue we had early on was it was slow to drain. So we had to have that is probably also contributed to it. We had the engineer come back and they had to figure, and then they finally dug up a little bit and saw something about the pipes that were installed under the surface. Something wasn't quite right, and they fixed that, and we now have good drainage.
Yeah,
Thank
great. Well, I just think you're a great example to others about persistence prevails.
I have one other question if there's time.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it.
Okay, thanks. Do any of you know of any relatively affordable pervious back surfaces for parking lots, which kind of ties in with the issue you had before, because all that, is it feasible?
Maintenance can be a huge issue. Govins did look into that. In fact, before we went with the terrace, we were contemplating doing a portion of our parking lot impervious surface. We had a little complication in the area we were thinking of doing was right at the location of where our preschool playground was. So sand was going to be a big issue, but amount of driving on it, and I can't speak to all of it, but it's not real simple. I mean, you need to do quite a bit of investigation for the materials, for the, they call it the high heel test. You know, you need to have it close enough so folks' heels or things don't get caught in it and trip. And maintenance, like thinking of clearing it in the snow, you'd have to really work with your plow people to not do it too low. I mean, there are a myriad of issues with it, and we decided we were not, we did not have enough of the positives in place to make it worth the money and the maintenance.
Yeah.
Thank
Well, thank you. I'm glad you.
Blue Water Baltimore could also help with that kind of question.
Yeah, they've been around the block on these issues and can provide some very expert advice on proceeding and resources and materials to do so. So, well, thank you. I'm glad that we had this time. I'm sorry that we have to bring it to a close, but I do want to direct you to our Green Team's webpage for further resources and schedule for upcoming learning labs. Each month there's a learning lab just like this on different topics. They are intended to be a kind of continuing education to support green teams and as follow-up to those who have been to our green team trainings. So you can see the green team trainings that are happening throughout the various regions, and the schedule is there. And so sign up to register for any or all of these events. And thank you for joining us on this webinar, this learning lab, planning successful actions. And contact us if you have any questions, please.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you.